right, welcome to pro football, the first 50 years where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to go back in time and check out a game, maybe from the 1920s or the 30s. Oh, sure, you can go online and find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was that someone kicked, where the game was played at, what the attendance was. You might find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos here, nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on in today's game. Ooh. Bears and the Lions. Oh, my goodness. Just goes to show you, it's one of those games where you can be totally outplayed and totally outgained and still wind up coming away with the victory, as the Bears did in this game. Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions at Briggs Stadium, November 22nd, 1959. This is obviously getting late in the season. There would only be 3 more games after this particular game for each team. This was just a tough, long, grueling season for the Detroit Lions. They, didn't play very well most of the games, but and just kind of show you, right, in this one game, they outplayed the Bears. They outgained them. The Bears had, I think, as we go on, I think like 14 total yards of passing after you take away the sack yards. They had 14 passing yards, and they still won the football game by double digits too. So it was just a very disappointing season for the Detroit Lions here. The season just couldn't get over with fast enough. Now, for the Bears, they started off, really slow. They started off 1-4. And I'll show you just in a second. And then they went on a tear, and they wound up winning the final 7 games of the season to finish 8-4, and they win second place. The problem was that they needed, I think it was the final 5 games or so. They needed for the Colts to actually lose a game to catch the Colts. Colts didn't do it. Like I say, like the final 5 games of the season, the Colts won them all. And so the Colts wound up with a record of 9-3, while the Bears finished in second place at 8-4. So, all in all, it was a very good season for the Bears. I was a little disappointed because they did get off to that very slow start, but they came on like a house of fire toward the end of the season. But then they fell 1 game short. So let's show you. And both these teams had very successful, especially the Bears, very successful preseasons. Let's see, I'll show you start off with the Lions season right here. Now, as I said, both teams very successful here, especially in the preseason. As I said, the Lions, for crying out loud, they played 19 games, 7 preseason games. Wow, that ain't happening nowadays. You got to play 3 seasons now in the NFL to come up with 7 preseason games. You play 3, right? You only play 3 preseason games now. But as you see right here, they played the Rams, the Cardinals, the Browns, the Giants, the Eagles, the Browns, and the Redskins. In fact, they played just the way it was back in 1959. They played the same team twice. They played the Browns twice. And it's very, very successful. They beat the Redskins, they beat the Browns, they beat the Eagles, they beat the Browns, they lost to the Giants, they tied the Rams, and this one's wrong here. This is Pro Football Archives. I don't know if they care. I don't know if anybody cares. But this one here against the Cardinals, it says that the Lions won this one 21-19. This is wrong. The Cardinals won this one 21-19. I don't know how to get all the Pro Football Archives, and once again, I don't even know if they even care that this is wrong. Like I said, but you can see, they were 2-1 in the exhibition, but it was only exhibition. No, exhibition season is one thing, regular season is something else. But you can just see once they started off 0-4, and basically almost after the first 4 games, they were out of the title race almost. Then they finally beat the Rams, and they beat the Rams again, and then they beat the Cardinals. Now, I mean, they beat the Rams twice. The Rams only won 2 games all year. Then they beat the Cardinals, and the Cardinals only won 2 games all year. So even when they did win, the teams that they beat were not very good. So it was just all in all, this season could not get over with fast enough for the Detroit Lions. I mean, they had won the championship in '57, so just 2 years prior, they won the championship. So they can't say. Yeah, of course, you go in every season, everybody thinks they have a chance for the titles, but that would have to be true. Certainly in the Lions' case, that they would have some aspirations, obviously, of winning the title, especially since they won in 1957, and very convincingly, though. I mean, they beat the Browns 59-14 in the championship game. But we look here at the Bears, right? They are very successful. I mean, look at that. I mean, they only lost 1 game in the exhibition. They lost to the Browns 33-31. Other than that, they won. They were 5-1 in preseason. So very, very successful preseason. But then you'll notice here what happened as soon as the season started. Now they were one of the only a couple teams to beat the Colts. They went into Baltimore and won 26-21, but they upset big time. By Vince Lombardi's first ever regular season game as the head coach of the Packers. Packers won 9-6. Big upset. Then it's I mean, they lost to this is one of those things at home, no less. They lost to the Rams, who only won 2 games all year. They lost 28-21. Then they lost to the Colts. Then they lost to the 49ers. So, I mean, to be fair, they lost to the 49ers in San Francisco. The 49ers finished with a record of 7-5. They lost to the Colts, who won the whole championship. And they lost to the Packers, who were 7-5. So they lost 3 out of 4 losses were to very good teams. As I said, now the Rams were only finished with 2 wins. So this had to be somewhat of a disappointment, though. Although the Rams were actually 2-2 at one point, and then they lost the rest of the games of the season. The Rams won on the road in Chicago, and then they won on the road in Green Bay. So the Rams didn't win a game at home all year. The Rams were 2-2, and then they lost their final 8 games of the season. So this had to be a big loss right here. But then you'll notice, right? Then they returned the favor. They beat the Rams, then they beat the Packers and the 49ers. And, newsflash here for you, right? That they would win this game 24, although they were outplayed. They would win this game 24-14. Then there was 3 more games left. They beat the Cardinals, they beat the Steelers, and then they beat the Lions again in Chicago to end the season. So I mean, I said they won their final 7 games. But we show you, what they needed in the final 5 games of the season. This is the Colts. They need the Bears had 4 losses at this point in time right here. Bears had 4 and the Colts had 3. So the Bears kept winning, but they needed the Colts to lose 1 more game and out of the final 5. And as you'll see right here, that did not happen. The Colts just kept on winning. So the Bears finished with a very, it was a tough division. 49ers finished 7-5. The Packers finished 7-5. The Colts finished 9-3. The Bears finished 8-4. So very tough division, and the Bears finished 8-4. So I mean, they nothing to be ashamed about. Other than being just straight up just disappointed that they didn't maybe make it to the championship game. They would have hosted the championship game as well too if they made it, but it was not meant to be. Now this game is played. Let me share my screen here. At Tiger Stadium / Briggs Stadium / Navin Field. Well, All right, where we at here? All right, Tiger Stadium, Wikipedia. Ah, boy. Good old Tiger Stadium, previously known as Navin Field and Briggs Stadium, was a multi-use stadium located in the Corktown neighborhood of Detroit, Michigan. Now, it was, being known obviously as Navin Field is because uh, the teams or a team from Detroit was in the NFL. The Detroit Panthers actually played at Navin Field when they were in the NFL. So a team from Detroit played on Navin Field in the NFL. A team from Detroit played at Briggs Stadium. It's all the stadium. It just kept changing names. But Navin Field, as I said, it wasn't the Detroit Lions. It was the Detroit Panthers played at Navin Field in the NFL. Let's see, the stadium was nicknamed the Corner for its location at the intersection of Michigan and Trumbull Avenue. It hosted the Detroit Tigers from 1912 to 1999, a long, long time, as well as the Detroit Lions from 1938 and 39, and again from 1941 through 1974. The last Tiger game at the stadium was held on September 27, 1999. After the decade, the Tigers vacated the stadium. Several rejected redevelopment and preservation efforts finally gave way to the stadium's demolition, which was completed on September 21st, 2009. So it is what it is. I mean, just one of those things is that, some stadiums wind up, making it, like Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, and other ones, been around. As we're going to see, this stadium opened up the same day as Fenway Park did. Well, Fenway Park is still around. Tiger Stadium is not. They were, unable to, or I guess, I don't know, didn't want to spend the money. Maybe it was too much to try to save it. So it is what it is. But in 1895, Detroit Tigers owner George Vanderbeck had a new stadium built at the corner of Michigan and Trumbull Avenue. The stadium was called Bennett Park and featured a wooden grandstand and wooden peaked roof in the outfield. At the time, some places in the outfield were only marked off with rope. Now, obviously, back, that's a fire hazard waiting to happen right there. 1911, the new Tigers owner, Frank Navin, ordered a new steel and concrete baseball park to be built on the same site that would seat 23,000 to accommodate the growing number of fans. Navin Field opened on April 20th, 1912, the same day that Fenway Park did in Boston. Let's see. While constructed on the same site as Bennett Park, the diamond at Navin Field was rotated 90 degrees. Shoeless Joe Jackson, later banned from baseball, scored the first run ever at Navin Field. Over the years, expansion continued to accommodate more spectators. In 1935, following Navin's death, new owner Walter Briggs Sr. oversaw the expansion of Navin Field to a capacity of 36,000 by extending the upper deck to the foul poles and across right field. By 1938, now this doesn't happen all the time, the city had agreed to move Cherry Street, which once again, they a lot of times, we'll just move a street for you. But you'll be able to move a street because the stadiums are put in between, obviously, streets, and you can sometimes only expand the stadium only so much because due to the streets. But if they can move a street, they can do some extra, building, some expansion to the stadium, adding more seats, which happened here. So after they moved Cherry Street, allowing the left field seats to be double-decked, and now renamed Briggs Stadium, had a capacity of 53,000. So you got 53,000 back in the late 30s. That's a nice size stadium for baseball and football. 1961, the new owner, John Fetzer took control of the stadium, gave it its final and longest-lasting name, Tiger Stadium. A fire gutted the press box on the evening of February 1st, 1977. In 77, the Tigers sold the stadium back to the city, which then leased it back to the Tigers. Let's see. As part of this transfer, the green wooden seats were replaced with blue and orange plastic ones, and the stadium's interior, which was green, was painted blue to match. Unfortunately, sadly, by the early 1990s, it was clear that Tiger Stadium was at the end of its useful life. Both the city and the Tigers' ownership wanted a new park, but many campaigned to save the old stadium. That's what I grew up watching. Not that I saw a lot of Lion or Tiger games on TV, but when I did, it was Tiger Stadium, boy. Let's see. So what we got here. As due to we're going back. Due to then owner Walter Briggs' dislike of night baseball, lights were not installed at the stadium until 1948. So the first night game of the stadium was held on June 15, 1948. But I mean, you just throughout the years, it's just the players. Baseball, World Series was held there. All-Star games were there. Championship professional football games were played. So, the players that just played there through the years, just mind-boggling. The 1971 All-Star game, if you can check that out on YouTube, they might even have the whole game there up on YouTube for you. It was literally freaking who's who of Hall of Famers and played in that. It was just crazy, absolutely crazy. The amount of unbelievable ball players that played in that game, 1971 at Tiger Stadium. Reggie Jackson, I think, could be wrong. I thought it was Doc Ellis. He hit a home run off of that went over the roof from right field. What a shot! Unbelievable. The 1971 All-Star game. But Tiger Stadium was home of the Lions, 38-39, and again from 41 to 74. Stadium hosted two NFL championship games, 1953 and 1957. 53, the Lions won both those games. 53, they won 17-16. In 1957, they won 59-14, both over the Browns. Football field ran mostly in the outfield from right field line to the left center field, parallel with third base. Show you some pictures of that. The benches for both the Lions and their opponents were on the outfield sides of the field. In the early 1970s, the city of Pontiac and its community leaders made a presentation to Metropolitan Stadium Committee of a 155-acre site near the intersection with Interstate 75. Initially, dual stadium complex was planned that included a moving roof that was later scrapped due to high costs and the lack of commitment from the Tigers. The Metropolitan Stadium Committee voted unanimously for the Pontiac site. In 1973, ground was broken for a new stadium to exclusively house the Lions. The Lions played their final game at Tiger Stadium on Thanksgiving Day, November 28, 1974, against the Denver Broncos. And of course, I remember watching that game because, obviously, now we have a. I'm all for it. We have a Thanksgiving Eve football game. Sign me up for that. And there's 3 Thanksgiving Day games. Once again, sign me up for that. But back in the day, there was only the 2. There was the early game, which was the Broncos at the Lions. And, of course, I don't know who the Cowboys played in 1974. But I was obviously, watching this game here, the Bronco Lion game on TV, one of the 2 games. But it's obviously boxing with Joe Louis was there. Holy cow. University of Notre Dame played University of Detroit at Briggs Stadium. Soccer was there. Kiss played there. I'm sure, tons of things were played there. Obviously, Ty Cobb. Oh, he was a longtime player for the Tigers. Babe Ruth was believed to be the longest verified home run in Major League Baseball history there, possibly estimated at 575 feet. And all Babe Ruth did was drink, but eat like hot dogs and stuff like that. Unlike the guys who, take steroids and all kinds of stuff today to hit home runs. Unfortunately, the ailing first baseman Lou Gehrig voluntarily benched himself at Briggs Stadium, ending his consecutive streak of 21-30. Due to the progression of his disease named after him, it was the final game of his career. So sad. But there's the All-Star games, 41, 51. I mean, look at that, 41, 51, and 71. Right. Here we go. Of the many home runs in these games, the most often replayed is Reggie Jackson's drive to right field. It was hit so high up in the light tower that the TV camera lost sight of it until it dropped to the field below. Jackson dropped his bat and watched it sail, seemingly astonished at his own power. I mean, just absolutely crushed the ball. And of course, then the only guy to ever die, pretty much on the, didn't die right at the particular point in time, but he died of a heart attack on Chuck Hughes, collapsed 1971 against the Bears, making Hughes the only NFL player to date who died during the game. Very, 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 very sad. So let's just show you some pictures here, because we got some coverage here to talk about. Let's go over some pictures real fast. All right, 1959, Detroit. All right, let's see here. Oh, there we go. This is a good one. I like this one. This is a good one. All right, so you can see right here. See how it's laid out. You got first base down here in the one end zone, then it goes all the way out to left field here. But you can see there's a big gap, right? See, this is the obviously, right, the one out of bounds right here. There's a huge gap here between the sideline and where the fans are. Same thing over here. See this big, right? I mean, some of the stadiums that they have nowadays, obviously it's built basically, for football, and so the sidelines are much closer to the action. I mean, you can see, like if you're like way up in the corner, see how far they are from right over here. So if you're like way up in the corner over here, and the game is being played way over here, I mean, you're far away from the action. Let's see. Here's a good shot right here. See this? Look at the gap. Detroit Lions 1959. Maybe it might have been the game against the Packers. This is a Thanksgiving game, possibly, is what this says right here. So this is the shot from that. But you can see both teams are on the same sideline. Right? I'll give you another shot in just a second. I mean, look at this. I mean, see, like, I mean, that's a large gap right there. As I said, so if you're way up in the corner up over here, and the game is over here, and if somebody grabs a ball and starts running like way over here, right by the goal line, you're far away from the action there. Here we go. Right. This is probably what they were talking about. Possibly like one team is here, and possibly like one team is over here. Here's a good shot. It's tough to say exactly who this is. See, this is the 59 Thanksgiving game. Now, this is the Lions right here. Now, this is not the Packers here. So I don't know what this is here, to be honest with you. Where's the other one here? Oh, here we go. I do like this one right here. Right? They show you, it just basically looks like it's like gas pipe. Right? It's just like all. You got the connections at the corners here. The pipe goes into the ground. Where you can see it's like strung up. Right, here's the goal line right here. Here's the playing field, right? So he's in the end zone. I'm not sure what he's doing over here, but this obviously the end zone because the goalposts were, on the goal line, not in the back of the end zone like they are nowadays. Where the heck we at here? Hopefully they got the one picture. Where we at here? Let's see. Hold on. Where they show the padding on it. Here's a nice one. It looks like this one was colorized here a little bit. But I mean, you can see right here, New York Yankees, which is this team right here, versus the Lions at Briggs Stadium in 1950. Lions running back is Doak Walker. There we go. Here's the picture. Right. Now you see the padding, how they just wrap the heck out of it with the padding. Now, I always kind of wonder. 1952 Lions and Leon Hart catches one of his 2 touchdowns from quarterback Bobby Lane in a 17-6 win against the Browns. Now, I always wondered, did the ball go over the crossbar? And because you could see he's up in the air, decent ways. And obviously he's extended as far as he can go, jumping as high as he can go. So did the ball actually go over the crossbar? Or did it just sail just underneath it where he caught it, jumped up and caught it like that? But I mean, I was trying to point out, as you could see, right, the padding. So obviously you don't want to run into it because this is not moving. But they did pad the heck out of it. Let's see, is there anything else here? I know there was a. There's a picture of the outside of it. It's very, very classic. Oh, here we go. It's very classic. Briggs Stadium here. Right? So you see on the side of Detroit Tigers. Briggs Stadium, an iconic monument, Detroit post-war years. But just the way it was. I mean, they just plopped it down. There's a street here, and it looks like there's right on a corner right here. So there's a street here, right, going this way, and then another one here. Obviously, you can find how big the streets are, but that's the way they were built back then, right? But good old Detroit Stadium, does my heart well. I mean, I said, I'm an old fart. I mean, it is what it is. But once the Lions went inside, it was just. I mean, they go inside. That was the end of me. So please forgive me. Football is supposed to be played outdoors in the weather elements and on grass. They went from all of that. I think was it the 69 Thanksgiving game when they played the Vikings, and you could see it. I mean, the snow was coming down, and the game was like, at the end of the game, you couldn't even tell the Vikings players their numbers because they had white uniforms, but they were just totally covered in mud. I mean, snow's coming down. Oh, man, that's football. Then they go inside on artificial turf and get the absolutely hate it. But so let's a little bit pregame action here, shall we? So we got the Jackson Citizen Patriot, November 22nd, 1959 edition of the Jackson Citizen Patriot. Interesting name for a newspaper. All right, here we go. Lions to go along with the good thing. Detroit Lions won't tamper with a successful combination in their game Sunday with arch rival Bears. Coach George Wilson of the Lions will start the same offensive unit, which last week helped upset the Los Angeles Rams. He'll keep Earl Morrall. I mean, it was just funny because he wanted with 3 quarterbacks playing in this particular game, and they all threw a bunch of passes. Terry Bard can keep Terry Bard flanker and John Henry Johnson at fullback for the 51st meeting between the Bears and the Lions. This trio was largely responsible for the Lions' second triumph of the National Football League season, both over the Rams. Wilson also planned to use the same defensive alignments which held Ollie Matson and the explosive Rams to a near standstill on the ground. They did a very good job the week prior against the Rams. I mean, you keep Marconi, Arnett, Ollie Matson, to Very low rushing yardage totals. I mean, they did a very good job the week before against the Rams. Bears no longer are as awesome as the days when they were called the Monsters of the Midway and were annual championship contenders. But they have won 3 consecutive games and have an outside chance of overtaking the Western Division leaders. Their last victory was a 14-3 upset of the first-place San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers twice have beaten the Lions by lopsided margins. The Lions will be forced to combat an explosive running game. Rick Caceres, always particularly rough on the Lions, came out of a long slump with a brilliant display against San Francisco. Rookie Johnny Morris has been another fine Chicago runner with kick returns especially. Ed Brown will start at quarterback for the Bears with Zeke Bretkowski in reserve. Brown has completed the longest pass of the season, 88-yard combination with Harlan Hill. Hill hasn't been troubled by his leg injury jinx lately and is a constant threat to break away with the pass. Chicago is a 5-point favorite to win its 4th straight game. Wilson said Tobin Rote, the disposed number 1 quarterback, is ready to go again after a knee injury. Rote will take over if Morrill falters. Yeah, Rote, was the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, but he's had injury issues all season long. The Lions' passing game, for the most part, has had issues all season long. Lions haven't beaten the Bears since 1957. A 21-13 victory in the final regular season game sent the Lions into a playoff that led eventually to their last world championship. And it would still be here in 1926. That was 1957. It would still be the Lions' last championship. Almost 70 years. So if you're a Lion fan, boy, my God, you're jonesing for a Super Bowl victory. Bears have won 32 of 50 previous games with Detroit, with 2 ending in ties. The revived Lions now are in 5th place in the Western Division with a 2-5-1 record, but they've lost only 1 of their last 4 games after a dreadful start. So, what we got here? All right, now let's go to the Detroit Free Press, November 22nd, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. What do they got to say? All right. Lions loaded for bear. Up to old tricks. A wise guy visiting the Lions office last week remarked that he could sniff wood burning in the back room, then pointed out smartly that this was where the coaches labor and plot their strategy. Such disrespect is frowned on these days. The Lions, after all, have lost only once in the last month. Yet it is a fact that the lamp has burned longer than usual. Old tricks have been reviewed and evaluated. New tricks have been conjured up. Everything goes now, you see, and it is time to shoot. The works because the Chicago Bears are in town. Nothing would delight ex-Bear George Wilson, the head Lion, more than a surprise victory which would finish off wily old George Halas and remove the Bears forever from the 1959 championship race. Their duel Sunday is set for 1:30 p.m. at Briggs Stadium with some 50,000 expected. Several thousand bleacher seat tickets are still available, in case you're interested. Despite his long association with Halas and the Bears, Wilson has been unable to gain a semblance of mastery in his 2 years as head coach of the Lions. He has whipped the Bears only once in 4 tries. It's true, though, that the one victory was at a timely 21-13 affair, which clinched a title tie for the Lions in 1957. They wind up tied with the San Francisco 49ers that topped the Western Division. They had a playoff game. The 49ers were about halfway through the third quarter were winning 27-7 in San Francisco, and the Lions came back and wound up winning that one 31-27. Wow. Let's see. Wilson knows Halas and all the Halas tricks. As a longtime Bear player and player coach, Wilson was activated occasionally as a spy in enemy camps. Last week, he locked the gates at Briggs Stadium and obviously in fear of New Hallis espionage agents. It was well he did because the Lions were doing a few different things. On the surface, the Lions looked the same as they did last week, in good physical shape, perhaps their best of the season. Earl Morrall will start at quarterback again, and John Henry Johnson and Hopalong Cassidy will be the running backs, with Terry Barr as the flanker. What happens from that setup remains secret, but it seems more than likely that the Lions will show something new in an effort to surprise Hallis and the Bears. Morrall can earn himself solid standing in this game. He was unspectacular but steady in last week's 23-17 conquest of the Rams. And Wilson is going along with him until he falters. The Bears are rolling after a 1-4 start, which left them on the bottom of the pile. Two of the fiercest defensive lines in football will be on display, and it's possible, if not likely, that they will determine the outcome. All right, and we have the Grand Rapids Press, November 22nd, 1959 edition of the Grand Rapids Press. All right, what do we got? Big week for Hungry Lions. Coach George Wilson, Detroit Lions, will endeavor to slam the door on the Chicago Bears' faint Western Division title hopes when the two clubs meet Sunday afternoon, November 22nd at Briggs Stadium. Then the busy Lions will take on the Green Bay Packers at home Thursday in their traditional Thanksgiving Day game. The Bears, with a 4-4 record in the conference, have won 3 straight games to retain a mathematical chance to top honors, but another defeat would end all hopes for 1959. The Hallis threats, this red dogging style of play, must be handled by the Lions if the Motor City Club has any idea of racking up a victory. Key offensive performers for the Windy City 11 in the recent surge have been Caceres, the former Florida men, former Florida men have dropped Los Angeles 26-21, Green Bay 28-17, and the league-leading San Francisco 49ers 14-3 in their last 3 starts. Now, these are the probable lineups for each team. Chicago parlayed a bruising defensive performance plus a fine ground game built around fullback Rick Caceres to slow the 49ers' pennant express. Alert defensive backfield play, aided and abetted by a rushing defensive line, resulted in 5 key interceptions to halt all San Francisco scoring star, who rolled up more than 90 yards rushing last week, and the sparkling running of little Johnny Mars, a 180-pound speedster from Santa Barbara State. Ed Brown seems to have an edge over Zeke Bradkowski for the number 1 quarterback spot and currently ranks 6th in the NFL with 1,138 yards gained on 73 completions in 147 attempts. Which would say, I mean, back then that's like 50%. So back then that's not bad. 50% completion percentage is not bad, but 1,138 yards. They played 8 games, and he has 1,138 yards passing. I mean, my goodness. I mean, you got guys nowadays that can have 1,138 yards passing in 4 games, and it took him 8 games to do that. He also has 8 touchdown passes. So basically, he has 1 touchdown pass basically a game. Jim Dooley, Harlan Hill, rookie Willard Duville, Bill McCall offer Brown an outstanding group of targets. Chicago shows a record of 2 victories and 2 losses against the Western Division top contenders, Baltimore and San Francisco. The Bears down Baltimore, then lost in return, and also split with the 49ers, losing 20-17 in the closing seconds on the coast and winning 14-3 at home. Detroit's record against the same 2 clubs is 0-4. Wilson has indicated that Earl Morrall, the Lions' only winning pitcher, will direct the Lions' attack. Morrall went the distance in both games against the Rams, winning 17-7 on the coast and 23-17 in Detroit, and these are the Lions' only winning efforts of the 1959 campaign. Wilson must go for a win against the Bears because a victory may assure him of a job for the next year. Again, many of Detroit's hopes rest in the play of fullback John Henry Johnson. Johnson back after a single-game suspension because he missed a flight home from he missed a plane coming home from San Francisco. It's because he was served papers to show up in court after the game was over with. He got the papers and he just disappeared, and he never made the plane on the fly home. So, coach suspended him for a week. Let's see. John Henry Johnson, after a week suspension, bullied his way for 56 yards and 19 tries prior week, many times without the aid of outstanding line blocking, to record his best day of the season. A repeat performance by the 217-pound former Arizona State star would boost teams' chances considerably. Johnson's top effort of the entire 1958 season was against the Bears in Chicago in the season finale in near zero weather, when he gained 73 yards on 17 tries and caught 2 passes in a losing 21-16 effort. And there's the, I mean, you can see with the Lions here, after they had played 8 games, their leading receiver has 18 catches. So basically, their leading receiver catches 2.5 balls a game. They've caught 85 passes. So basically, they don't even average 11 completions a game, which is really, once again, that's 1959. So it's a little bit of a different game. More running, less passing. I get it. The completion percentage was down, but still, they averaged like 10.5 receptions a game. So which is, obviously the better ball clubs average, even back in 59, more than that. So their passing game, their leading receiver has 252 receiving yards, 2/3 of the way through the season. So he's on pace for like 400 yards. Their leading receiver, Hopalong Cassidy, only has 12 catches. Is on pace for like 400 receiving yards for 12 games, which is just, very, very bad. And there's all the Lions. They played 8 games. They've only scored 13 touchdowns. So, not very, very good. All right, so we got one more here. We got the Flint Journal, November 22nd, 1959 edition of the Flint Journal. What do they got to say here? Then we'll start cracking into the game there. November 22nd, 1959, Flint Journal. Wilson stands pat. Detroit Lions won't tamper with a successful combination in their game today with the arch-rival Bears. George Wilson will start the same offensive unit which last week helped upset the Rams. He'll keep quarterback Earl Morrall at quarterback, Terry Barr at flanker, and John Henry Johnson at fullback. This trio was largely responsible for the Lions' second triumph of the National Football League. Both wins were over the Rams. Wilson also planned to use the same defensive alignment, which helped keep Ollie Matson, the explosive Rams, to a near standstill on the ground. This one says quite a bit the same as the one I just read. See, the Bears' last victory was 14-3 upset over the first-place 49ers. The 49ers twice have beaten the Lions by lopsided margins. The Lions again will be forced to combat an explosive running game. Rick Caceres, rookie Johnny Morris, has been another fine Chicago runner with kick returns especially. Ed Brown will start at quarterback. Zeke Gronkowski is in reserve. Yeah. Pretty much all the same. Wilson said Tobin wrote the disposed number 1 quarterback is ready to go again after a knee injury. Wrote his non-throwing hand. I think it was, I remember, like his thumb. He did something to his thumb, which caused him some issues for a couple games. And now he injured his knee in another game. So he's had his injury issues all season long. All right. Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing as was said in that other article. All right, so let's get cracking. So we got to the Detroit Free Press, November 23rd, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. All right. Okay, here we go. Lions win everything but the game. Couple pictures here. 4 Lions and the referee stops Ricky Caceres on this play. Apparently, even the referee got in there to tackle him. But Gary Lowe is no match for Rick on his 11-yard TD run right there. All right. Lions were down 24 points before even scoring. 54,059 suffer from futility. Well, you see, I mean, they had 130 yards of total offense, the Bears, and they scored 24 points. 13 first downs. They had 14 yards passing after you take the sack yardage away. Yeah, there were 6 out of 18 passes. And it looks like they had 4 passes intercepted. They lost 2 fumbles, the Bears. Apparently, I'm reading this, they had like 6 turnovers. 14 total yards passing, and they still scored 24 points and wound up winning the game. Earl Morrall, the bright new hope, cocked his arm smartly and fired a pass to Dave Middleton, waiting unattended in the end zone. But when things are going bad, this is what happens. The ball flew from Morrall's hands toward Middleton, then struck the goalpost and bounced harmlessly to the ground. No one incident better illustrates the utter futility of the 1959 Detroit Lions than the touchdown which never came. Nothing better explains what happened to them Sunday as they overwhelmed the Chicago Bears, played them off their feet, and yet again lost 24-14 before 54,059 people at Briggs Stadium. How could the Lions lose? They outgained the Bears 339 to 130. Outran them 220 to 53. They outpassed them 109. Well, this is wrong. No, it's outpassed them 196 to 14. Now the Bears had 116. I don't know what the heck this means. Maybe they're putting like punt return yardage in here or something like that. But the Lions didn't have 220 yards rushing. But anyway, they really outgained them. The Detroit defense was magnificent. The offense moved well enough, yet the Bears won. Our Lions choke on the chalk, which marks the field from 20 yards to the end zone. If they do not choke on it, they trip over it. The opportunities were there Sunday, but the Lions betrayed themselves by yielding 4 pass interceptions and 4 fumbles. Wow. So they had 8 turnovers. They had the 4 intercepted passes. Wow. So the Bears picked off 4 of their passes and they lost 4 fumbles. The first 3 times they did it, the Bears killed them. There were several instances when it seemed certain that Detroit would finish the Bears' dreams of a miracle march to the Western Division Championship. Even so, the score was 24-0 in the 4th period before the Lions scored their first points. The Bears scored 2 touchdowns in the first 3 minutes of the second period, one after a fumble by Terry Barr at midfield, the other after a fumble by Morrall at the Detroit 16. Chicago added a field goal just before halftime after Yale Larry fumbled a punt, and it scored another touchdown with the aid of a pass interception. Nothing but turnovers. Lions rallied from the 24-0 deficit with 2 quick scores midway in the 4th period, but could do no more. Primed for victory, alive and alert, the Lions battled the Bears with fists and elbows, and several times the game seemed likely to burst into a brawl. So it seemed at the opening kickoff on the second play, the Lions smacked the Bears. Rick Caceres and Jim Steffen recovered the ball for Detroit on the Chicago 28. Here was the quick break. Turn to page 38. All right, so we're going to go to 30. Go to the next page here. The Lions pressed down to the 6-yard line A 15-yard penalty threw them back. Morrow's pass skipped off Barr's fingers at the goal line. Morrow ran beautifully to the 5, tripped, and fell. Unbelievable. Jerry Perry's field goal kick from the 17 was blocked. All this for naught. Wow. Unbelievable. The fisticuffs broke out briefly then, with Jim David twice drawing 2 major penalties after the Lions had thwarted the Bears. They managed to choke the Chicago attack despite the penalties. Again, Morrow pushed the Lions ahead, but then Barr came on his flying reverse and fumbled at the 50. The Bears' first look at the open field was enough to set them afire. They punched the distance in 8 plays, with Ed Brown passing the final 8 yards to Willie Gallimore for a 7-0 lead. 2 minutes later, the score was 14-0. Morrow was hit hard trying to shake away for a pass and fumbled. Bill Bishop recovered at the Detroit 16, and 2 plays later, Caceres bolted into the end zone from the 11. So that was that picture I showed you, where he scored from 11 yards out. Things continued to go all right for Morrow. He threw a pass to Danny Lewis, and it was intercepted. Coach George Wilson switched to Tobin Rote. A road pass skipped off Barr's hands into the arms of the Bears' A.C. Caroline at the Chicago 39. Yeah, plus the Lions receivers did not help the quarterbacks at all in 1959. The Bears couldn't move. John Aveni punted. Larry dropped the punt. The Bears recovered it on a Detroit 39, and a minute later, Aveni kicked a 39-yard field goal to make it 17-0 at the half. The Lion cause was not hopeless even then. Detroit had shown it could move against the Bears, and in the second half, Wilson decided to call the plays from the bench. He was no more successful than his quarterbacks. The coach's maneuvering, however, did get the Lions started on a drive in the third period. An interference penalty put the Lions on the Bears' 15. At this juncture, Morrow threw the sure touchdown pass to Milton, the one which hit the goalpost. A moment later, Morrow threw another pass into the end zone. The Bears batted it around a bit, and Caroline grabbed it for an interception that finished Morrow for the day. Brown, Bear quarterback, arched a 54-yard pass upfield. Larry made a brilliant interception, but as he was being tackled, Harlan Hill tore the ball from his grasp. Then Jerry Reichow came in to play quarterback for the Lions for the fourth period. He carried the Lions to the Chicago 37, but his pass was picked off by Erich Barnes, who raced back to the Detroit 48. On their brightest play of the day, the Bears sent Caceres crashing through the line for 47 yards. Brown snaked for the touchdown and a 24-0 lead. Even then, the Lions did not give up, as they have done in other games. They struck twice in 2 minutes for touchdowns, which gave them some hope of pulling out a victory. A 40-yard pass between Reichow and Hopalong Cassidy and a personal foul placed the Lions on the Bears' 1-yard line. John Henry Johnson scored. On the first play after the kickoff, Gene Cronin stole the ball from the hands of Caceres at the Chicago 13. Reichow passed to Nick Petrosani, and Petrosani banged the final yard to make the score 24-14. More than 7 minutes remained. The Lions and the crowd dreamed of a great comeback, something like those of 1957. But Reichow did not have the passes to do it. Here a lot of guys run with the ball there, the Lions. But you see, Tobin Rote was 0 for 5. Jerry Reichow was 4 out of 12. Morrow was 7 out of 18. They had over 200 yards passing, over 100 yards rushing. Here's the receivers right here. None of these receivers really scare you. And here we go. All right. Here's the Bears. Rick Caceres had 111 yards rushing. 47 of it was on one run. So, but you see it. Not much here. Then they were 6 out of 18 passing the ball for 53 yards, but they only had a net of 14. So they basically must have lost 39 yards on sacks. So. All right, now pictures. Nope. All right, so let's go now to the Chicago Tribune, the November 23rd, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. What do they got to say? Bears win, trail leaders by 1 game. Defeat the Lions to score 4th in a row, 24-14. Terry Barr slips between Bears J.C. Caroline and Charlie Sumner, but is unable to handle the pass from Earl Morrall in the first quarter in Detroit. Defenders failed to get this one, but Caroline intercepted 2 passes, and Sumner won as opportunistic Bears scored a 24-14 triumph. And see, here's those goalposts all padded up and everything. Yeah, see, I mean, their receivers were not very good. And it's the Giants. And here's the right. So you see the Bears are 5-4. They're 1 game behind the Colts and the 49ers. Well, the 49ers would finish at 7-5. The Bears would win their final 3 games and finish 8-4, but the Colts kept winning. The Colts won their final 3 games and finished 9-3. So, all right. Detroit, 6 Detroit fumbles. I think they lost 4 of them, though, and 4 interceptions eased the way for the Chicago Bears to inch near the Western Division lead in the National Football League. So they had like 8 turnovers. Unbelievable. That's the way the season went for Detroit had a lot of pass interceptions too. Scoring 17 points in the second quarter and increasing their lead to 24 points in the fourth period, the Bears won 24-14. It was their 4th consecutive triumph in a belated rush for the title and their 5th victory of the season, leaving them only a game behind Baltimore and San Francisco. They lose the statistic battle. Yep. Except for the progress it provided in the pennant race, it was a game the Bears will probably want to forget. Their passing attack gained a net of only 14 yards, and on the ground, even with a 49-yard run by Rick Caceres, who contributed 111 yards and 21 carries, the Bears could penetrate a lightly regarded Lion defense for only 116 net yards. Match against Detroit's 143 rushing yards, 196 passing yards, and 339 total yards, the figures were anything but flattering to a team which still aspires to play for the World Championship. Sumner is ejected. The tempo for the day was set on the second play from scrimmage when Caceres fumbled and the Bears had to make a successful goal line. Here's the starting offensive units. There's a scoring right here, and here's like kind of like the defensive teams, the referees, the coaches. All right, what do we got here? Let's go to the next page of the Chicago Tribune page. Let's see here. All right. Let's go to the next page of the Chicago Tribune here to finish this article up here. All right. There we go. All right. What did it say? The Bears had to make a successful goal line stand before regaining possession. The Bears were to beat the Lions back from the goal line again in a magnificent stand in the third period and were in the process of repeating it in the fourth period when Charlie Sumner, the most quiet and gentlemanly Bear of them all, was ejected for unsportsmanlike conduct while defending himself in the bruising going. The penalty that accompanied His ejection moved the ball from the 13-yard line, where it was third down, to the 1, where it became first down. And John Henry Johnson, back in good graces of the club, but not the Lions fans, finally negotiated the last foot for the Lions' first score. Detroit scored again, and a minute and 45 seconds later, when Caceres committed his second fumble and Gene Cronin recovered on the 13-yard line. Nick Petrosani, the former Notre Dame All-American, got the touchdown from inside the 1-yard line by lunging over a pile at right tackle. As usual with the Bears, starring honors had to be allocated largely to the defense, where Bill Bishop, Doug Atkins, Earl Leggett, Bill George, Joe Fortunato, and rookie Richie Pettibone turned in outstanding performances. Offensively, despite the difference in statistics, it was pretty much of a standoff. Both teams demonstrated the need for quarterback meetings. Detroit's was so bad that Jerry Reichow, a former Iowa All-American who has been used at end and in the slot, had to be swung into the attack in the later stages. He was at the throttle when the Lions got their 2 consolation scores. Previously, Earl Morrall and veteran Tobin Road had succeeded in accomplishing little, if anything, major. Accomplishing little, if anything, major league. The Bears attempted to catch the Lions off guard by starting Zeke Bratkowski. And their closed T formation with a man in motion. But Coach George Wilson, a Bear when the formation was devised years ago, knew the answers and had his Lions prepared. It didn't take Coach George Halas long to decide with 54,059 other experts that on this day the closed T was doomed. He rushed Ed Brown into the game in the first quarter, and with Brown came the slot and spread formation. It was from these formations that the Bears produced the only real thrilling plays of the contest, in addition to Caceres' 49-yard run, which wound up on the 1-yard line when the big fullback became involved with teammate Jim Dooley, who was trying to block from there. Brown threw an enormously long pass to Harlan Hill. This pass netted the Bears 54 yards, although Yale Larry of Detroit caught it. Hill snatched the ball out of the Little Lions' hands before Larry had a chance to tuck it away, and the official scorer called it an interception and a fumble. It availed little, however, for the Bears soon had to punt because Caceres was thrown for a 13-yard loss on an attempted sweep. In addition to all the fumbles, interceptions, and some penalties that had direct bearings on the outcome, proceedings were enlivened by several fistfights involving gents much less quiet and reserved than little Caceres, or little Charlie Sumner, but no one else was thrown out. And so it went all day, just one silly thing after another. The Bears got their first break late in the first quarter when Terry Barr, the old Michigan All-American, fumbled attempting to swing around Leggett's end. Fred Williams recovered on the 50, and by the end of the period, the Bears, directed by Brown, had reached, and there's some of the stats, had reached the Lions' 8-yard line. In the drive, Brown passed 9 yards to Hill, 15 to Willard Duville, the other end, and 17 to Dooley, the slot man. Brown missed Hill and also threw too hard to him as the big end came racing across the end zone on the first play of the second period. But on the next play, he faked a handoff to Caceres charging into the line, faked a pass into the end zone, and threw to Willie Gallimore, who was swinging around right end in the flat. The pass was low, and Willie had to take it off his shoe tops, but he straightened up in time to fake David and sprint into the end zone. Morrall, who had as much trouble as San Francisco's John Brody had a week ago with the Black Angels up front in the Bears' defensive line, found himself surrounded 3 plays later, and before he could throw the ball, he was separated from it. Bishop recovered on the Lions' 16-yard line. Johnny Morris, a spirited but thwarted workman on this sunny autumn afternoon, moved it up 5 yards. On the next play, Caceres found an opening at guard, stepped into the secondary, and bolted into the end zone. J.C. Caroline made one of his 2 interceptions late in the second period, and out of it developed John Aveni's 39-yard field goal. but not until the Bears had to punt from their own 43-yard line and Larry fumbled on the kick. Center John DeMore recovered for the Bears on the Lions' 29. Action began getting real exciting on the second play of the fourth quarter, and out of the melee came the Bears' third and last touchdown. Barnes, who had had the misfortune of being called twice for interference in the Lion drive that carried to the Bears' 9-yard line in the third period, intercepted a route pass. He fumbled along the sidelines after returning it 17 yards and batted the loose ball out of bounds. With the play over, John Gordy, a 250-pound tackle from Tennessee, came charging into Barnes. His knee struck Barnes on the chin. Barnes went cold and stiff, and Bishop tangled with Gordy. Meanwhile, some uninformed Lion ill-advisedly took a swing at Fred Williams, former intercollegiate heavyweight boxing champion. The unidentified Lion quickly learned the error of his ways and, when ordered, was restored. Caceres raced 49 yards down to the 1. It would have happened only in Detroit today. Oh, my goodness. All right, so we got just a couple more here. Sometimes it's when things ain't going right, nothing goes right for you. It is what it is. All right, here we go. Here's a picture of Hallis right after that sideline melee. Hallis in a fuss. Coach George Hallis of the Chicago Bears gets a finger-shaking discussion with an official during the fourth quarter of yesterday's game with the Lions. Here's what the commotion was about. Chicago's Rich Barnes, which I just talked about, intercepted Jerry Reichow's pass and returned the ball to midfield, where he fumbled but smartly flicked the ball out of bounds to retain possession for the Bears. John Gordy belted Barnes across the sideline. Linesman Bill Bishop of the Bears ported Gordy's face with his fist. Then Hallis rushed across the field to join the party. Technically, he should have been penalized for stepping on the field. However, the officials motioned to him that he could cross out of bounds again and see to his stricken player. Barnes was revived, later returned to the game. That ain't happening nowadays. You get knocked out or whatever, you ain't going back in the game. Back then you did. Yeah. If you could wake up and, where are you? At Briggs Stadium? Okay, you're good to go. You're going back in the game. No one was penalized during all of that. And there's Mr. Hallis right there. Lions jitters give Bears title chance. Papa Bear George Hallis, quite aware of the significance of the approaching holiday, can murmur earnest thanks that the wrong team got the jitters yesterday at Briggs Stadium. If you hadn't looked at the standings, you'd have thought the Detroit Lions still had a chance for the Pro Football Championship. The Lions were tense and taut, giving away the ball 4 times on fumbles and 4 times on pass interception, 8 turnovers. The Bears, playing with the relaxation of tail enders, thereby achieved an untidy but rewarding 24-14 victory over the Lions before a sellout crowd on an Indian summer afternoon. 64-year-old Hallis has used a 4-game winning streak to thrust the Bears into title contention. With 3 Sundays to go, Hallis trails the deadlocked Colts and the 49ers only by a single game. What made the Lions so jittery? I wish I knew, replied Coach George Wilson. It's the same old story. We missed too many scoring opportunities early in the game. Dropping that touchdown pass by Terry Barr hurt plenty. Detroit's generosity was appalling. The first dozen times they had the ball, the Lions yielded their 8 fumbles and pass interceptions and didn't score a point. They had a 17-yard field goal blocked. Their quarterback cadence was faulty, leading to many offside penalties. Well, that's one of the problems when you have different quarterbacks in there. Their cadence, they're all different. So guys, none of them seem to get like the offensive lineman or anybody gets into a rhythm. They don't know exactly. They don't know how a guy is going to call the signals when you got 3 different quarterbacks in there. At halftime, the Bears commanded a handsome 17-0 lead, had gained only 73 yards from scrimmage. At the finish, the Lions more than doubled the Bear yardage and limited the Chicagoans to a net 14 yards by passing. That doesn't mean a thing, muttered Luke Creekmore. Did you see the scoreboard? After the Bears had amassed a 24-0 margin, the Lions worked up their best frenzy of the game. Once guard John Gordy smashed defensive back Erich Barnes so viciously that Hallis came racing across the field. Shaking his fist, Hallis drew no penalty. Neither did Gordy. Barnes was hurt, but returned to the game later. What got the Lions so steamed up at the finish? We started to get a few breaks, explained Yale Larry. We aren't used to them. We knew we could go against the Bears, and we did. There was nothing particular. That got us mad, interposed Joe Schmidt. But after we scored a couple of times, we thought we had a chance to catch them. It was the resourcefulness of Jerry Reichout, third-string quarterback, but the Lions eventually got touchdowns on one-yard plunges by John Henry Johnson and Nick Petrosani. Earl Morrill started at quarterback and got nowhere the first 7 times the Lions had the ball. The often-injured Tobin Rote failed to complete a single pass in 5 attempts, and the next 3 times Detroit had the ball. Finally, Reichout sent the sputtering Lions into motion, but it was much too little, or much too late, or much too little, too late. Bears invariably scored immediately following the Lions' mistakes. The game had this sequence. Terry Barr fumbles at the 50 on the 4th play. Willie Gallimore takes Ed Brown's swing pass for an 8-yard touchdown. Morrow fumbles on his own 16. Rick Caceres crashes over from the 11. Larry fumbles a punt return. John Aventi kicks a 39-yard field goal. Reichout's pass is intercepted by Barnes. Brown squirms across from the 1 after Caceres runs for 47 yards. It hardly would be correct to say that the Bears had no offense. The rambling Caceres, experiencing relatively lean year, came up with a big day with 111 yards and a 5.3-yard average. Ed Brown, taking over from starter Zeke Bradkowski, the 3rd time the Bears got the ball, didn't pass often, but completed 6 of 14 tosses at appropriate times. J.C. Caroline intercepted 2 passes, 1 from Morrill and 1 from Rote. Barnes and Charlie Sumner got 1 each, 1 from Morrill and 1 from Reichout. The Lion fumblers were Larry twice, along with Morrill and Barr. It is necessary for the Lions to regroup their forces today for the Thanksgiving Day game with the Green Bay Packers on Thursday noon at Briggs Stadium. If the Lions lose again, they might qualify the number 1 draft choice of the National Football League meeting next Monday at Philadelphia. 2 teams hold priority on the Lions in the draft. They are the Chicago Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams, both with 2-7 records. The Lions are giving them a run for it at 2-6-1. And there's the scoring right there. Here's the one. Almost a touchdown from Barr. The pass hits him, just drops it. But a muff pass is a key play. It must be this one right here. Barr, yep. We sprung a beautiful pass pattern in the first few minutes against Chicago Bears yesterday and should have had a touchdown. We didn't get it. Terry Barr couldn't hang on to Earl Morrill's pass. If we had gotten that 6 points, I'm sure the game would have been different. That's why I call it the key play of the game. The pass pattern is called a slant in, out, and in. The Barr goes in, takes a step or so out, maybe toward the flag, and then goes back in again. From a flanker position to the right, Barr slants across the scrimmage line at an angle. He runs a few steps, fakes a few steps out, and then cuts in again. When the pattern is run right, the play is good. We can't even cover it in practice. Well, that's what happened here. It was a good play. Apparently the pass was good. Everything was good except for the reception. We had the ball on the Bear 19. We had just drawn a 15-yard holding penalty. It was first down. Morrill called the pass play, and Barr ran the pattern very well. He was in the open at the goal line. Moral pass was there, but Terry couldn't hold on to it. That was the start of many bad things that happened to us. We didn't get any points at all on the first drive, out of the first drive. On fourth down, Jerry Perry's field goal try from the 17 was blocked by Erich Barnes, defensive halfback for the Bears. You got to hop along. Cassidy was out here doing some blocking. Johnson over here doing some blocking. Middleton did it like a curl or a button hook. Dorn went out this way. Maybe he starts running out here. Maybe he pulls his linebacker with him. Maybe J.C. Caroline comes up to cover him over here. But he was open, middle of the field. Pass was there. Reception was not. And then let's see what else we got here. Penalty for delay wasn't intentional. And here we go. We got this one. Charlie Ann, the Lions' 260-pound center, became a runner yesterday, picking off teammate Danny Lewis's fumble in the air. He advanced 10 yards. He gets credit for the yardage and no attempts since Lewis started to play. There he goes. There's the center. Penalty for delay wasn't intentional. Questions that call for an answer after the Detroit Lions frittered away a 24-14 decision to the Bears. The first few minutes of the game, the Lions took too much time and were penalized 5 yards on a field goal attempt. Was he intentional to get a better kicking range? George Wilson. It was not intentional. We just took too much time getting it away. Jerry Perry's kick from the 17 ultimately was blocked by defensive back Erich Barnes of the Bears. What was the ruling when Yale Larry seemingly intercepted Ed Brown's pass in the third period, but Harlan Hill wound up with the ball for the Bears? John Thomas, Flint attorney, is official scorer at Lion games. Thomas ruled Larry made the interception and that Hill stole the ball as Larry turned. Officially, Larry is credited with an interception and charged with a fumble. Hill receives no pass receiving yardage on the play. Why was safety man Charlie Sumner of the Bears tossed out of the game? Referee Bill Downs. Pass interference on Hopalong Cassidy was called in the end zone. Chicago player Sumner was charged with roughness afterwards. On 2 punts, one by the Lions and one by the Bears, clipping was called and the ball was restored to the punting team. What's the ruling? Downs. If the clipping occurs while the punt is in the air, the ball is returned to the kicking team. Jim Steffen started at defensive halfback for the Lions, recovered Rick Caceres' fumble on the first play from scrimmage, and then disappeared. What happened to Steffen? Dr. Richard A. Thompson, team physician. Steffen suffered a pulled muscle, but he should be all right for the next game. Well, was Jim Gibbons really hurt in the last half minute of the game, or was he faking an injury to stop the clock? It was a fake and not very dramatically enacted. And once again, here's the rushing. I mean, you can see. I mean, the Bears, Morris at 8 yards, Douglas at 4, Pettima 3. I mean, like nothing, absolutely nothing. Caceres had the one long run. And you see it in the passing right here, right? I mean, Bradkowski was 0 for 4. Brown was 6 out of 14. So 6 out of 18 for total 39. For total net 14 yards passing. But goes to show you there's more than one way. And even that badminton, of all things, Detroiters pace badminton meet. They even had badminton in there in the newspapers. So it just goes to show you. I mean, it says sometimes, when things are going bad for you, like they did with the Detroit Lions, they go bad. And when things go good, I mean, especially, you win 7 games in a row, and you're not like the greatest team of all time or something like that. You got to have some breaks go your way. And this was one of those games where the Bears, a lot of breaks went their way. And as what happened here for the Lions, is just microcosm of the whole season. Just like anything that could go wrong went wrong. Even when they outgain their opponent, there's turnovers and drop passes and all kinds of stuff. Just thwart any chance of victory. And for the Chicago Bears, they were started off 1-4, and to rattle off the final 7 games of the season and finish with a record of 8-4. It was a very successful season for the Chicago Bears, who wound up 1 game short. But even in those 7 games, pretty much any team, has to get some breaks. And in this game, the Bears, a lot of turnovers, and only had 14 yards passing, not much rushing. They got some. The turnovers helped a lot. But this is I said the season couldn't end fast enough for the Detroit Lions. So that's the way it was on this date, November 22nd, 1959, as the Chicago Bears played the Detroit Lions at Briggs Stadium in pro football. First 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.